we have with Life in Violet, our very first interviewee is Dr. Nadine Gasman, who is the president of the National Institute of Women in Mexico. Welcome, Dr. Gasman. It's such a pleasure and an honor to have you in Life in Violet.
Thank you, Veronica. It's really a pleasure to be with you and your audience and to be interviewed for Life in Violet as part of the Global Voices. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Suffice to say that above all very important positions of the highest level in a huge country as Mexico, I consider you a real feminist and a wonderful human being. And I don't say that lightly.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And I appreciate, because I know you don't say it lightly, but that's how I feel. I am a feminist and I thrive to be a good person and a good woman. So I'm really happy with your words.
Today, it's about International Women's Day. And INMUJERES, which is the National Institute of Women, who's in charge of 64 million women, which is enormous. 6 million of them are indigenous, which is a double challenge. So what did the National Institute of Women of Mexico do for this International Women's Day?
Well, let me just give a little bit of background of what is it we do, because that will make it easier to understand what we did for the National Women's Day. We are the part of the government, of the federal government, that has the stewardship of women equality policy. So most of the work we do is to mainstream the gender perspective in all the ministries, and for that we have a program, a national program for equality between men and women, Pro Igualdad, which we developed through consulting with almost 5,000 women from around the world, Mexico, which is now my world, very diverse women, indigenous women, poor women, young women, sex workers, home workers, everything. And we got what they needed. And what we did at the same time was a dialogue with the ministry with all the ministries, with 70 ministries and other institutions of the country, to say, this is what women need, and that's what is it you're going to do for them? And that's what we did when we came to go into the government in 2019. And basically, Veronica, what women in Mexico told us is that they need three things. And we saw that, and I bring it because it's very important, but we saw that in the marches, the thousands of women that went out to the streets in International Women's Day. They told us, we want to have salaries. We want to have economic empowerment. To do that, we need for a care system that really takes care of the people we love, so we can go out and work and be comfortable. And we need to live in peace and without violence. So 8th of May this year was was a very strong year in terms of the number of women that marched in the streets. After 2 years of pandemic, it was fantastic to see only in Mexico City about 80,000 women marching in the streets, women from all walks of life, old women, young women, women with children, women with their grandmothers and mothers in their wheelchairs. Everybody was on the street. And it was also a very interesting year, because the themes of and the tone of the march was about peace, about rights, about we want to live in peace, we want not to end violence against women. We know it's a very important problem in Mexico. There are about 10 women murdered every day, you know, femicide around the country. It's extremely painful. We're working, but it is a real problem. But basically they were saying, here we are in the streets, we are demanding our rights, but we're happy, and we're happy to be here and alive. So 8th of March was a very interesting day, if I may say, because there were these demonstrations, but previously, in the morning, we had a very interesting meeting with about 200 women leaders with the president of Mexico to say, here we are. This is a country and this is a government that really believes in women. And, you know, we have a paritarian cabinet, 50-50 women. We have a paritarian Congress and Senate, and as a result of this parity in Congress, we have a law that says we need to have parity in everything. So it's not easy, but we're building that, and we have parity in all the congresses around the country. So you're feeling it's starting to make a difference. For the first time in Mexico, we have 7 governors out of 32. They had been in the whole history of Mexico 7, but now we have 7 governing at the same time, which is fantastic. It's making a tremendous difference. And these women with the Supreme Court ministers that we have 4 now for the first time also in history. We have a president of the Senate, which is a woman. We have for the first time a minister of security, of economics, of culture, of education, that are energy, that are very important portfolios. So parity is starting to show everywhere. So this group of women had a meeting with the president, and there was a very strong commitment. And after that, we as the Institute with the Ministry of Environment did a fantastic meeting with women that are caregivers, not only for people, but also for nature. And that brings to the theme of this year that has to do with climate change and the environment. So we had a very interesting conversation about what is it and what's the role of women in the care of the forest, of the water, of the territory, that, as you know, are very important themes in our societies, and especially in Mexico, and where indigenous women have a very strong and important role as caregivers, as defenders of the land and territory, but also as defenders of the biodiversity. So, and then in the afternoon, there was this big demonstration that not only happened in Mexico City, but around the country. So it was a very interesting, very strong, of course, there had been a lot of meetings and art festivals, and, you know, March is a month of women around the city. We have films and all kinds of activities. But what I want to say is that we really are seeing what is it to have a progressive government that really believes in women, and that has really a critical mass of women that are leading the way.
Exactly. And that takes us to my second question, because as you know, you've been in UN Women in Brazil, which is a subcontinent in itself. And in the rest of South America, there is this indigenous belief and feeling about Pachamama, which is Mother Earth. All of us feel a special bond with Mother Earth. This year, the theme of the International Women's Day was women and the environment and biodiversity. So having 6 million indigenous women with this deep feeling of contact with nature, and also because family survival is also founded on the earth or what nature yields, no? So how can this theme for the International Women's Day 2022, can it be adapted to the Mexican context?
It is very important and very interesting for us, and in this national plan I talked about it, to pay attention to indigenous women is extremely important, because they are, you know, when you see the statistics of Mexico, you see the difference between men and women in many of the indicators, but then you see the difference between non-indigenous and indigenous women, and the difference are very big in maternal mortality, in education, in land ownership of the land. So our program, which is, you know, one of the objectives of our government, President López Obrador government, is to leave no one behind and no one outside. So all our program is geared to really develop policies, develop programs, support the needs, especially of indigenous women, which are the ones that are mostly had been left by this neoliberal government and this such a discriminatory society behind. So there is a very conscious effort that all the programs will get to indigenous women. It has to do with scholarships for girls and for women to go to the university. It has to do with the programs that gives all the social programs have an impact on indigenous women. But in terms of the environment, the Ministry of the Environment is also a woman that comes from the rural area, that has been a leader of cooperatives, rural cooperatives. So she's very not just committed, she knows deeply what is needed. So that's why we did our celebration with the caregivers, because we thought it was extremely important to make them visible, to make sure that people knew that we care about the women that care for the land and the territory. And at the same time, we know we have a real problem, because there is a lot of violence for women and for men, human rights defenders, especially that are defending the territory, water, the environment, etc. But there is a real commitment to not just create the conditions, but to acknowledge the importance of the earth and the environment. There is also very strong knowledge of the impact of environmental degradation in the life of women, how much, you know, we lose by not acknowledging and not really doing what needs to be done. And we had been quite vocal and quite present in this CSW with this team in New York. You know, we had been very active. We had been analyzing what's the impact in terms of other rights, the terms of sustainability, and how essential it is to really acknowledge the needs of women, especially human rights defenders of the territory. And that's why we're very proud that Mexico signed the Escazú Agreement, and we are, you know, we're active on its implementation.
And also to listen to indigenous women and their knowledge of precisely taking care of the land, their agricultural techniques, and this respect for natural resources. It's beginning to be done here in Argentina. And then What are the projects for INMUJERES, for the National Institute of Women in Mexico?
Most of our program, as I say, is to mainstream a gender and intersectional perspective in all policies, which is quite interesting because it's being done. So I'm going to just share some of the programs we are doing at the Institute, which are innovative and we believe have a potential of really changing lives of women. First of all, we have been working within the government of Mexico in an interinstitutional group to end violence against women. You know, we had the Minister of the Interior brought us together and said we need to solve that. So we have been doing a lot, some very strategic issues and activities. For example, we had involved women, the women institutes of the states and municipalities of Mexico in the security groups that they're called building peace and security groups, where every day around the country, in all regions, states, and at the national level, the issues about security are discussed. And at least once a month, we discuss violence against women. And that has put everybody, you know, the prosecutor and the police, etc., together to really think what is it we need to do to change the situation of women and violence against women. And at the same time, we at the Institute of Women have developed a comprehensive model for primary prevention of violence against women. You know, we said it's fine. It's extremely important to care for women that suffer violence, to ensure that they have legal, psychological, health support, but we need to stop counting. We need to prevent violence against women. And then we developed this model. We are starting its implementation, and it's a model that looks into what can be done in education, in the media, in health, in work, in a very comprehensive, and to really change the culture, which is patriarchal, sexist, and which is really killing and hampering women's life in a very dramatic way, in cruel way. So the idea is that prevention means educating inequality, work to make transport and public spaces safe, promoting the rights of women with information and training, having zero tolerance on harassment. And we have just signed the 109, the convention. So we're working on all, because we know what we need to change is the culture. We're talking to men, we're talking to boys, so that's extremely important.
Normally, people think, okay, there is a law and that's it. There is the implementation of the law depends on how people feel about the issue. Here there is, for instance, a law by which every single public servant should be trained in violence against women. But the problem is that it is done merely as a step, an administrative step. That's why I think that prevention in this way, as you formulated, is so important, and it's so interesting.
Yeah, it's a very big challenge, and it's something, and we need to do the two things at the same time. Yeah. You know, we need to train all public servants to have an idea and to have insight and to question their own belief system. And at the same time, we need to work to ensure that women don't get harassed in the public transportation or at work or in their house. So, but we need to really invest in a very serious activities, action, policies to change the mindset of men, basically, if I may say. The other thing we are very committed, extremely committed, is in the development of the national care system. I know in Argentina, you're also working on that. Our idea is that we need to redistribute, to reduce, to recognize, to remunerate, and get representation of the care workers, to share this thing that actually maintains life, which is care. No, so we are developing a national system because we heard from women what makes women, make it very difficult for women to get in a formal work is the care, having to care for the elderly, the children, the people with disabilities, the people with that are sick. And we saw that during COVID, how women, you know, are in the forefront of the care system, both medical, but also at home. They became teachers, etc. And we need to distribute, you know, we really need to redistribute. We're working at the national level. We're supporting our legislators to have a comprehensive law. We're working with the executive to organize what we have already, which is all spread around, how we put it together so it really addresses the needs of the different women. And we also created with UN Women in the framework of the Generation Equality Forum, the Global Alliance for Care. And we're very happy because, you know, the Global Alliance of Care has now 55 members. From them, 12 are governments, including the government of Argentina, which we are very good partners, but also from other countries around the region and the world. We have private sector, NGOs, philanthropies, and the idea is to share the knowledge, share the needs, the lessons learned, the good practices, because we know that there won't be a transformative recovery after COVID if we don't put care in the center of our societies. If we don't become what ECLAC says, caring societies, or society of care, because it has the economic potential, the social potential, and I always say that it's civilizatory. And finally, a third example, I'm going to give you two examples of things we also do. We are working in the network of women that build peace at community level. So this is a program we're doing with the security minister to have a dialogue between municipal authorities and networks of women to see what needs to be done, not only to prevent violence, but to build peace, which is something that is beyond preventing violence. It's how we develop communities where we live peaceful life and we can be in peace. It's extremely interesting. One day we can talk, you know, to have women from all places. We have about 500 now in the country doing very different things, but just with this idea of how in this dialogue with the authorities we build peace. And finally, and maybe to close our conversation with what we started and in the spirit of the 8th of March, we are developing also a program to give women the rights on the land, which also opens them the possibility of being part of the indigenous community and rural communities. We're very happy. They're mainly rural indigenous women. Almost half of the Mexican territory, as you know, is collectively owned after the Mexican Revolution in 1921. But only 26% of the land is owned by women, or the rights of the land are with women, which also hampers their participation in the community authorities.
And
so
decision making. No?
Exactly. So we're working with the land prosecutor to really get the titles of the land or the rights of the land to women. To date, we have about 2,000. We hope this year to have another 5,000 to really move also in the rural area and for indigenous women, their lives, the livelihood, the power, etc. And it's very interesting. It's also very inspiring to see them get hold of their resources, of their lives, and really be have another role in their communities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Nadine Gasman, President of the National Institute of Women. It's been really an honor to share this time, this first edition of Life in Violet in English. Thank you for the good news. Thank you for the good news. I think we need good news, and we need to know that people like yourself are doing so many incredible things in favor of women.
We're trying very hard, and you know, there's a lot of things that need to be done, but we're doing it. We don't do it alone. We do it with the governments, with the governments at the state and local level, but especially, as always, with women.
Thank you so much.